Welcome to Only Murders in My Mind. Hello everyone, it's Thursday, it's 5 o'clock and it's Only Murders in My Mind. And I don't know what episode we're up to, I've lost count.
I think we all have.
It'll be
80.
80.
It's 80!
No.
Woo! I've got Liz and Mike. You see, we're all on first name terms now. Everybody knows who you are.
Well, we have been for quite some time,
Well,
really.
yes, if you're a regular listener, you'll know exactly who we are. We're three friends.
I like the idea it might be sort of, some sort of manufactured
Yes, we could
podcast thing, like, a boy band or something for podcasts.
Yeah, no, we're three friends who just like talking about murder.
Anything.
Well, yes, that is true. Yeah, we find we can actually have a discussion on more or less anything. We've just got three different minds that work in different ways, so it's usually interesting. And on that, we're going to do one of our ever popular mix and match. So we're all going to discuss something that we've researched, something we're interested in. No particular theme to this episode. And as I say, you as listeners seem to enjoy them. So I'll go across to Mike. Have you got something in particular that you've researched?
I've got a mystery, sort of a murder.
Yeah.
Do
Now,
tell.
it's called Bella in the... Now, Liz, how would you say that? Witch or wick?
I assume which.
Witch, yes.
Don't know.
It's spelled W-Y-C-H. So it could be wick, could be witch. We'll say witch.
Could be Wyke or Wyche.
Could be, yeah. It's more likely. It's all set in Worcestershire, in the Midlands.
Oh, right.
Anyway, we'll say witch. Bella in the Wych Elm, 1943. This all happened. Apparently, back in 1943, in a place called Stourbridge, which is down in the Midlands near Worcestershire. In Worcestershire, near Worcester, I meant. There were a couple of boys, a couple of teenagers who were poaching birds' eggs. And they would do it in Hagley Wood, which is part of a big hall. It's a ruined mansion type place. And one of the boys, Bob Farmer, climbed a large elm tree, looked into the hollow trunk, and instead of eggs, he discovered a human skull with tufts of hair and teeth still attached. Initially, the boys didn't say anything because they didn't want to get into trouble for doing the birding.
Poaching.
Bit. But initially, one of the boys told his parents, and that led to the police being involved. And what the police found when they looked, they discovered a nearly complete female skeleton wedged deep inside the trunk.
Ooh.
Scraps of clothing, including a crepe-soled shoe, a gold wedding ring, and a blue cardigan.
Right.
And a hand was missing, but it was later found buried. Well, later found by the police, and it had been buried nearby. And there was a piece of taffeta fabric stuffed in her mouth, suggesting she may have been silenced or suffocated.
Ooh.
Now, when they looked into this, they discovered the woman was about 35 years old. She'd been dead for about 18 months. And in the past, she had given birth to at least one child. And dental works suggested she came from a middle-class background. And despite extensive inquiries, no actual identification was ever made. Now, we need to remember this is in the beginning of World War II. Rationing was in effect, and the fact that she had some good quality clothing again suggested she came from a fairly decent background. And of course, it was difficult to discover who she was because many people's movements were disrupted because of the war, and records were incomplete because of bombing and displacement and what have you. Anyway, about 6 months after the discovery, mysterious graffiti began appearing on walls throughout the West Midlands, such as "Who put Bella in the Wych Elm?" And the graffiti continued appearing for decades, sometimes reading "Who put Lubella in the Wych Elm?" And the messages appeared on walls, on buildings, and even on an obelisk at Hagley Hall. Someone clearly knew more about the case than they were telling the police. And there were a number of leading theories. And theory number one was that she was a Nazi spy.
Oh, okay.
Some believed that Bella was Clara Mori, a German cabaret singer and possibly Nazi agent. And this, because of wartime paranoia, gained a fair amount of traction. However, there was no evidence to prove this was true. The second theory was that it was a local murder, and a woman named Bella, who worked at a nearby munitions factory, allegedly went missing around the same time. And some of the locals claimed that she was she was involved with married men and may have been killed by a jealous rage.
Wow.
Theory 3 was that she was a traveller and that she was a member of the Roma community whose disappearance wasn't recorded or mentioned to the police. And the remote burial location indicated this might also be travellers.
Wow.
So, in some ways, that was the end of the story, because they never found out who she was.
Yeah.
They never found out who did it. The graffiti seemed to suggest somebody knew the truth but wasn't owning up to it. And apparently this story has inspired books, documentaries, countless amateur investigations. And in 2014, a genealogist called Marie Hartwell Walker claimed the victim was Clarabella Dronkers, but this remains unproven. And apparently the graffiti still appears now and again, suggesting that the mystery has sort of caught the public imagination. And recent DNA analysis attempts have been inconclusive due to the age and condition of the remains. So in many ways, a true mystery.
Yes,
in as much
definitely.
as nothing has been proven one way or the other.
Yeah.
I thought the fascinating thing about it was the fact that it happened at the start of the Second World War, when people could go missing and there was so much disruption around that there weren't the records, that there probably weren't the police around to investigate
to
it
look
properly.
for them.
So I just thought I'd throw that one into the pot as what I consider to be a true mystery, in as much as lots of people may have lots of theories about it, but there was nothing to prove it one way or the other.
It's, mind you, they might have to dig something up. I was going to say it's strange that in this day and age, somebody somewhere hasn't wanted some DNA doing on the hair, possibly. I don't know how. I'm just thinking they do DNA sampling on such tiny things these days.
Yeah.
Whether they'd a bit, but there'd have to be a record of her DNA, and there wouldn't be, would there, from that time?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know if you could get some sort of familial.
Yeah,
match.
you might do. Yeah, that might lead you to a conclusion. But the thing,
It's long odds, isn't it?
well, I was going to say the thing with DNA is it's a brilliant tool for detectives, etc. But not if there's nobody on the list that they can match it to.
It makes you wonder, though, I mean, how many cold cases could be sort of linked back to the Second World War?
Yeah.
You know, I wonder how many people disappeared during the Second World War, and yet it was never considered to be murder or anything like that, because there was so much disruption.
Yeah, or
and
at any
bombings.
point where you can say, "Oh, he's gone signed up for the Navy and gone off to sea or
Yeah.
whatever," very
Yeah.
conveniently.
Yeah. Or he was in London when the Blitz happened, you know, probably got killed then.
Or he had a very secret job.
Yeah.
we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know
Don't know
where
what
he
he
is.
is.
It was working at.
And I mean, on the other side of things, I mean, it was probably easier to disappear people. Probably it was also easier to disappear yourself.
So, yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if
I think
anybody
the
will
thing
ever
with that
find
is
out.
there's all sorts of little bits that could mean something, but none of it's conclusive.
No.
Yeah.
No.
There's so many different directions you could go in.
So they think she was strangled, do they? Because her thyroid.
I think it was suffocated.
She had something
Suffocated.
stuffed into her
Oh,
mouth,
right.
yes. Yeah.
Because usually the bone here is crushed
Yeah.
if somebody's strangled, but suffocated.
But also it said about a missing hand.
Missing hand, buried.
And someone thought that was a witchcraft
Yeah.
thing.
Oh, it could have
Apparently,
been.
a hand of glory ritual, I believe it's
Oh.
called. So, yeah.
Oh gosh!
But it just shows how
know.
different times, because nowadays, if a body was found with clothing like that and with a ring and with a bit of taffeta stuffed into the mouth, there was so much in terms of DNA around that it would be much easier to have that trail leading
Yes.
somewhere, wouldn't
Yeah.
it?
And it'll also be things like, right, you know, let's look at the CCTV. Has
Yes.
anyone seen a woman of this description in wherever?
And of course now they can do face recognition software. They can build
a face up.
build up a face. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's we have come a long way when it comes to things like that, I must admit. But
Definitely.
that's really interesting. Talking about DNA.
I mean, the other thing is, though, just to say, because, I think now probably, stealing birds' eggs is probably less of a thing.
Less of a thing, yes.
Yeah, you're probably less likely to even discover the body in the first place.
Yes,
That's true.
yeah, because it was inside, it was in the hollow of this large elm tree. This, and it would only be two. You can't imagine a couple of lads being up there for any other reason than looking for birds' eggs, sort of thing.
Yeah, I
mean, kids climb trees.
Kids climb trees, yeah.
Maybe not as much as they
Not
used
enough,
to.
no.
Yeah, Vera's dad used to get poach eggs
Birds' eggs,
for
doesn't it? Yeah.
collectors. Yeah, but that's a different story. So I'm going to just go over an old American murderers, Boston Strangler.
Ah.
I watched a film on it recently, which obviously there's bits added to those just for the drama side of it, but there is a theory. I've got a terrible frog in my throat. I do apologise. There is a theory that the Boston Strangler wasn't one person.
When did this happen?
It was in 1962.
Right.
So it was 62, 63, around those times.
And there were 13, weren't there?
There were,
13
yes,
victims.
Yeah.
Well, apparently they're sometimes referred to as the silk stocking murders.
That's right.
Yeah.
The Boston Strangler, also the Phantom Killer. He was given that name by two investigative journalists, both female, that worked for Record America, Jean Cole and Loretta McLaren. McLaughlin. Can't even read my own writing. Between June the 14th, 1962 and January the 4th, 1964, 13 single women were strangled in their apartments. And none of these entries were forced, and it became apparent that whoever was getting in was telling them stories like, I'm going to do some work on the flats, the apartments, and I need to look at your central heat, and I need to look where your sockets are, all this sort of thing.
So was that confirmed? Were there witnesses to that?
Yes, there was one or two who they tried to get in. The person tried to get in with that tale, and they shut the door in their face. And there was one lady actually let this person in. And she turned round. He asked her something about the apartment, and she turned around and said, "Oh, I'll just go and get my husband. He's in the bedroom." She didn't have a husband, and he went.
So they would have had, obviously, people who could describe what this person looked like.
Yes, yeah, and they sort of had a photo fit of what they thought he looked like. The person that was sent to jail for it, after admitting it, was a guy called Albert DeSalvo. I don't know whether you know that name. And he was sentenced to life in prison, but he was sentenced to life in prison for breaking entry and sexual assault. His solicitor somehow managed to get his confessions to all the murders sort of by the by. He's not, whether it's just to avoid the death sentence. But there were both things that he told the police when he was, admitting to each individual murder, that were small details that were important. But sometimes he was so vague, they wondered whether he had actually done it. And he was stabbed to death in prison several years after he was...
So it almost sounds as though he may have done some of them, but not all of them.
Well, this is what they're thinking.
Yeah.
So profilers and things that the FBI profilers were just coming in then, and since profilers have looked at the MO for this and said they thought it was 3 different people.
Right.
And there were 3 men in a mental hospital together, and one of them had a history of sexual assault, and he was also arrested. In 2013, however, DNA proved a link between the final Boston Strangler murder, which was a young lass 19, Mary Sullivan, and this DeSalvo. So did he commit them all? Was there some sort of thing going on? He was very insistent that he got money for his story to protect his family.
Right.
So they're thinking that these 3 people that were in the mental hospital were in cahoots. They swapped information. Because the first Boston Strangler, the original ones, that he went for older women, and then all of a sudden he started going for young women. Which you don't do that.
That does
a serial
seem
killer,
very strange.
Yeah, serial killer doesn't do that. But yes, very often the tights or the stockings would be round the neck in a bow after they were strangled.
Right.
Absolutely horrific. And women in Boston, the police didn't handle it very well. But again, it was a breakdown of communication because there was something going on in Massachusetts as well. Very similar.
Right.
Didn't talk to each other. These police forces did not talk to each other. It was over the border, so it was nothing to do with anybody else. And as I say, this guy was, they from his description, from people he'd attacked, he was the one that they had for it. But there's been conflicting opinion ever since that it was just one person.
Interesting what you say about the police attitude to it, because I've been watching a crime thriller on TV at the moment. I can't for the life of me remember what it's called. No, it's not coming back to me. But basically, it's somebody looking at a cold case,
Right.
which happened, I think, sort of 70s, maybe 80s, in Glasgow, where a young girl was married. So you keep getting flashbacks to the original investigation and what have you. And one of the interesting things, especially in the climate that we live in today, was that the police were not actually saying this woman brought it upon herself because she was horrifically killed within the story. But the thing that comes across is the police were saying to women in Glasgow, don't go out by yourself. If you have to go out in pairs. And they actually thought they were giving good advice, which I suppose at the time they were. But the point that's coming across from this is that there's an assumption there that it's the women's fault.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be going out on their own. So it brings up this whole business today about where women are saying, we are not being, we are being what's the word I'm looking for? It's not their fault.
No.
It's almost as though they shouldn't go out on their own.
Staying at home.
Yeah. But there's
change to the kitchen.
Yeah, it's almost as though the victims become.
Well,
it's that kind of asking for it thing, isn't
yes, it
it?
is.
The Yorkshire Ripper. I mean, the police, because so many of his first victims were prostitutes. That there was a tide of feeling that they were asking for it.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And it wasn't till somebody that was murdered that was, a nurse or a teacher, some sort of upstanding character in society that they went, this is a bad person.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
The other thing that struck me about that story too, about you said that it was 2 journalists.
Yes.
Who sort of
they uncovered a lot of the information,
but also facilitated the name Boston Strangler. And you do wonder whether that was done because it's a good catty headline.
Oh yeah, it will have been.
It would have been.
Yeah,
got to sell papers.
Well, and also it was deemed. It's funny, there were 2 female journalists, I think, from what you said.
Yes,
and they were almost hyping it up. It's the Boston Strangler, so whatever you do, ladies, don't get out in the streets at night, sort of thing.
Yeah,
But the thing is, it's kind of like, it's not exactly advertising, but it's like, you remember public information films and Charlie Says and all of that. It's like, you've got to make it, you've got to make the public listen to it, or else they won't actually, keep themselves safe. They'll think it's nothing, and then...
Well, they took pictures for the byline of these 2 journalists.
Yeah.
And one of them particularly was targeted and had, bullets sprayed through the window or a Molotov cocktail, something. Anyway, her home was attacked. It's sort of because of the fact that she was on this the front of this paper, earning headlines, sort of thing. But
some people are very resentful, aren't they?
But it was because they were females that they were the police probably weren't taking them that seriously and were telling them things that they thought would never come to light, and they were joining all the dots up, which the police should have been doing.
It's like the Miss Marple, but in a slightly different way. She gets all the information because everyone thinks, she's only a little old lady.
Yeah.
So I thought because I always presumed the Boston Strangler was DeSalvo, that it was one person, and after I'd watched the film and done some more research, it probably wasn't. It was probably at least two people, maybe three.
Yeah. Okay, I've got something much gentler.
Good.
And very current. In fact, it may still be rumbling on even now, but I've been following with great interest the whole thing about the Salt Path.
Ah, right.
So have either of you read the Salt Path or seen the movie?
No.
So how long's the book out? How long's the book been out?
I think it's about 8 years.
Oh, right.
7 or 8 years. So it's recent-ish. But yes, it's a story of, the kind of the power of nature, I suppose. And
so it's not fiction. It's not a fiction book, is it?
It's a memoir, and it does say it's a true story.
Right.
And it's written by someone called Raina Wynn. And in it, she talks about this horrendous double whammy, basically, where her husband gets a terminal diagnosis.
Oh, right.
And they lose their home through circumstances of no fault of their own. And for whatever reason, because it's a while since I read the book, so I can't exactly remember, they decide what they're going to do is they're going to go and walk the Southwest Coast Path, which is a long, long walk. I mean, it's a few hundred miles. It's, the kind of thing that would take you some time. And I believe it's quite grueling. There's ascent, there's descent. It's not, it's not all a nice,
it's not a stroll along
easy
the
tarmac path. No, it's pretty, from what I've heard, it's pretty grueling. But the amazing thing is that her husband, Moth, starts to feel better.
Oh.
Even though they're like, they're wild camping, they're basically, they've got no money, they're living on, pot noodles and whatever they can kind of scrounge, really. But yeah, so at the end of the book, he feels a great deal better. And I think even, some of his symptoms have possibly receded. So anyway, so far so good. And there's a big movie just come out about it. And in it, Raina Wynn is played by Gillian Anderson, and Moth Wynn is played by Jason Isaacs. So, good, proper Hollywood cast and everything. And then The Observer published an article the Sunday before last, which basically said, we've been talking to some people and it sounds as if, what's in the book is not entirely true. So one of the things that was mentioned was that when Raina Wynn, whose name at birth was apparently Sally Wynn, as it turns out, but she's known as Sally Walker nowadays. When she was working as a bookkeeper in a firm, some money went missing.
Oh.
Yes, and as the bookkeeper, she was questioned about it, and there were various exchanges, and the police were involved, and there was questioning. And it is alleged by the Observer that, the firm looked into it a bit more, and it turned out that quite a lot more money was missing. So, in order for it all to go away, various things happened, apparently. And one of the things that was involved was getting a loan on their house to pay back the money, according to the Observer. And this was done by apparently a family member who basically said, well, no member of my family is going to go to prison. And, said, I will lend you the money to do the paying back. It's lending. There's going to be interest on this. And, so far so good. And as part of the bargain, it was that, everything was going to go away. Any police involvement would stop. Apparently there were non-disclosure agreements signed, according to the Observer. And anyway, then the Wynns, or the Walkers, because Moth Wynn seems to be actually known as Timothy Walker, or Tim Walker.
Confusing.
Yes, it is rather, yes. So anyway, then they just disappeared. Presumably to go off and do this Salt Path walk. The other thing is that they had a plot of land in France with a house on it, because they kept saying about, being homeless.
Yeah.
But, they had land in France. It has been said that, the property on it was really, not livable in. But apparently they'd gone to France and stayed in a caravan on the property before. So,
A dewy uppie.
Yeah, so you would think, like, if you had nowhere to go, then probably
That would be the place.
go to France and, get in a caravan or something, rather than walk hundreds and hundreds of miles living on pot noodles.
Yeah, true.
Especially when your husband has just had a terminal diagnosis that you've been told is only going to get worse. So anyway, all of this stuff came out because they'd spoken to the wife of the person whose company it was that the money apparently went missing from. You see, and she'd said that her husband was obviously cross about it all when the book came out and he realized what had happened, because in the book it basically says something like, a childhood friend of Moth's asked us to invest in the company, and then we wanted to get our money back, and he said, oh no, you can't, I'll do some sort of arrangement with you. And it all went wrong, and a piece of paper was involved, and they were in danger of losing the house. And Rayner found the paper just in time, but the judge wouldn't accept it and, banged the gavel, and the house was lost. And so it's all very dramatic, So, yeah, the Observer came out with all this stuff, including various medical experts saying, this disease that Moth has got doesn't sound anything like any case of corticobasal syndrome that I've ever seen. So, yeah, all very interesting. And the reaction, on social media has been varied.
Okay. Some people are for them and some people are against them.
More or less, yeah. I mean, Raina Wynne herself, or Sally Walker if you prefer, did a 2,000 odd piece on her website explaining as much as about the money and the embezzlement. She basically said, the financial loss in the book is not about that. The book is about a very specific part of time. And she said, about the missing, if I made any mistakes in the business, if any mistakes were made in the business, note that use of the passive there, so no actual agent implied, then I'm really sorry, and it was such a pressured time. But yeah, she also put on several medical documents addressed to her husband. But I'm not sure they quite make the case that she thinks they do, because there's lots about, this is unusually mild. We're not even sure this is
that's not
corticobasal. No.
It's funny because I just looked up the Salt Path because I didn't.
Yes.
And it's about 630 miles long.
Yes.
Devon, Cornwall. That
yeah,
way.
it's not it's not the sort of thing you want to undertake lightly. No. I mean, you wouldn't get me to do that in a million years.
But when you look up on Google, it says Salt Path National Trail, 630 miles long, made famous through Raina Wynne. Raina Wynne's book, The Salt Path, about her and her husband Moth. And
yes.
So, there's still that connection there, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, her Wikipedia entry has been somewhat changed.
Yeah.
So they're keeping up with it all.
Yeah.
But
it makes you wonder, doesn't it, whether or not, I once heard somebody say, a famous person, I don't know who, that there's no such thing as bad publicity. And you do wonder whether
I did check
book sales will
the
go
Amazon
up or down.
charts, and I mean the book's at number 2 on the most sold and most read at the moment. It's in the top 100 in the whole UK Kindle store.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, though, don't forget there's a film out as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the article, of course.
Yeah. I mean, somebody said they'd been in a bookshop at the weekend and they had a pile of the Salt Path on the counter because people incoming, I keep hearing about this Salt Path book. Have you got one?
Yeah.
So,
And people will because I'd never heard of the Salt Path before. But now...
Oh, you haven't lived.
I haven't lived, no. But now I thought, now I know more about it, I'd still be intrigued. I'm not necessarily saying I'd buy the book, but I'd be intrigued to see how the book does. Intrigued to see how the film does.
Yes.
Whether this publicity or this investigation by the Observer, did you say?
Observer, yes.
Whether that will have an adverse effect on the film.
Well, there's obviously going to be a documentary on it at some
somebody
point.
suggested that on social media that Gillian Anderson and Jason Isaacs might want to reprise their roles in the expose film. Other people have suggested that Raina Wynne might like to go on another long walk to get over all this.
But it does it does make you wonder, doesn't it? I mean, the film is going to be portrayed as a true story stroke memoir.
Oh, it absolutely is, yeah.
And if the story is being suggested by the observers maybe not being as true as it...
Bit skewed.
Yes.
There are certainly some things that appear to have been left out if what the observer says is correct.
Where does
Notice how carefully I'm speaking here.
But where does that leave the film? I suppose the film company are thinking, look, we've spent X million pounds on making this film.
They've basically said
we've got to get our money back.
Our film is according to the book, and we were assured that the book was.
That's all we can do, isn't it?
And the thing is, Raina Wynn will have signed some sort of contract.
Yeah.
So, but no, the reactions have been really interesting because on one hand, you have people who are saying, oh, I mean, I never believed it anyway.
Yeah.
Who'd believe all of that? There's other people who are really upset. Some people are saying, I can't believe this because, I had or my husband had a similar diagnosis and this gave us hope and now that's been taken away.
Yes. Yeah.
There's other people who are saying, I can't believe this. I can't believe people are being so horrible to Raina Wynn after all she's been through. And people are horrible and why can't they just leave her alone?
Yeah.
And does it even matter if it's not true? And you think, well, yes, it
Yes,
does
it does.
matter because,
laughing all the way to the bank.
on one hand, if someone through no fault of their own has had two horrendous, setbacks in their life, that's a bit different from, hypothetically, someone who embezzled a lot of money and then disappeared, with a husband who maybe condition is not quite as bad as, it was portrayed in the book.
I think
not saying it was or not,
No.
but it's hypothetical.
And I think sometimes...
I mean, how do you two feel about, a memoir? How would you feel if you'd read something and then it turned out that actually there were bits missing or
quite
something had been
bits.
misrepresented? Yeah.
Yes.
I think it would depend. I mean, certainly if I read a memoir that seemed to imply that here are things you can do if you've got a serious illness that will make it help improve it, and I suffer from that illness, and found that by doing whatever they were suggesting made not 1 ounce of difference, then I would feel put out. But then again, maybe I might also feel a bit naive and gullible for believing it could, because you go with... I mean, if
the point is, though, if you're told something is a true story, I mean, you could argue that is misrepresentation.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's lie. I was going to say, I'll take you across to Australia to a similar sort of story. It is and it isn't. This is about Annabella Natalie Gibson. Bella Gibson, as she was well known. This woman sold health foods under the name of the Whole Pantry. Not only did she sell health foods, she wrote books, she did public appearances, she was on the television, because she told people that she had incurable brain cancer, and this she'd gone on a retreat and it was all pure food and all this sort of thing had cured her. Right. And she got a massive following, absolutely huge, and people were investing in this, the Whole Pantry. Very, very famous in Australia. She was an influencer, because this was all, I mean, she's only 33 now.
That is quite some going.
She was active. This is when all this was going on, was 2013 to 2015. And
so she must have been
20.
What, 20?
Oh yeah, she was in her
Wow.
She'd had quite a sad upbringing, but I mean, so a lot of people have, but they don't go on to this. What I found intriguing, because I watched the film documentary type thing, and then did some research in it. She really believed what she was saying was true. She really believed she had cancer, and as the story goes on, people start doubting her, because this woman could not possibly have what she says she has and look like that. She looks so well, made millions of dollars, and then more and more things started being exposed, which was probably will happen when you're very, very famous. People will start scratching the surface, won't they?
Yeah.
And they found her diagnosis was false, and it sort of came to a crunch when she was interviewed on national television by an investigative journalist who was really, gritty and just called her out about everything. And she was going, but you've not had cancer, have you, Bella? And she was going, well, I have. I've got the documents to prove it. And then she'd go, yeah, but that's not your MRI scan. That's somebody else's MRI scan. Ooh. And she was like trying to cover herself. But as I say, the thing I got from the whole sort of looking at her personality was she was a compulsive liar. She really did not know when she was lying and when she was telling the truth. She got took to court. I don't think she ever served any time. I think she got made bankrupt. And then she went off to another country and started it all over again.
Oh, my gosh.
So
you would think that people would learn, wouldn't you?
Yeah. So that's a similar type of thing, but she was actually barefaced lying.
Yeah. I mean what I've been talking about is kind of different. I mean, I think the other thing is, you know, the use of different names meant probably that an awful lot of people who knew them, you know, if you're not a memoir reader, then why would you take any notice of someone called Raina Wynn? Yeah. I mean, you know, if you're into that sort of thing and you read the book pages of The Guardian or something, you might think, oh, that looks a bit like so-and-so, but you wouldn't connect them.
No.
So, I mean, the other thing is I think they were living in Wales and all of this takes place obviously in southwest England. So again, they've moved, you know, they've changed name, they've moved regions. So.
But it does show that people are gullible.
Yeah, especially when they're vulnerable.
Especially when they're vulnerable. And if somebody's got a good story to tell, and we've talked about being storytellers before, if somebody's got a good story to tell and can tell it convincingly, then it's surprising what people will believe, even though to others it might seem, why on earth would you believe that story? You know, people do. It's what scammers work on. Scammers all the time.
If you're assured that something is true or correct, you know, you will believe.
One of the things they did in the documentary film was there was a young lass who did have what Bella said she had and came off all her meds. And then went to this retreat and she was getting worse and worse. No. And her family could see this happening. And I think that's where they started going, just a minute, let's look at this more carefully.
Yeah.
You know, and she wasn't the only one. There were other people that did exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So she was really
I imagine
criminal.
this Bella never really kind of thought about the implications of that.
No. She came over as this really caring person who wanted to do good for the world. She convinced so many people, you know. So it just goes to show, Mike, that how vulnerable we can be and how
and you know a good storyteller can tell a very, very convincing story. Yeah.
Indeed. And on that note, I think we've done our topics.
Right, I think it's cup of tea time.
I think you're right.
Okay, so thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you. Well, we won't see you, but you'll hear us again this time next week on Only Murders in My Mind. Bye for now. You have been listening to Only Murders in My Mind, a Random Thought production, produced by John Bissett. The music in Peril was composed and recorded by OM Studio Strings.